The call from my mother came on a quiet afternoon, catching me off guard. I was organizing their cabinets, as I had so often done over the years, when my phone vibrated. "Sam, your dad and I want to talk to you and Lena about the future of the house," she said, her voice unusually somber. The weight of her words settled over me like a thick fog. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the home that had witnessed every childhood memory, every laugh and argument, every piece of ourselves that my parents had stitched together over decades of sacrifice and love. A vague sense of dread filled my chest. I could already picture how this conversation might unfold. Lena, my older sister, had always seen herself as the heir to everything, even if she'd been largely absent in recent years. I'd stayed back, year after year, helping with household chores, driving my parents to doctor's appointments, and putting in hours of care. In contrast, Lena had left years ago, busying herself with her life and family. I could almost hear her voice already, claiming she deserved the house simply because she had children, because she had a family to raise. It felt unfair, unjust, yet familiar. I'd spent my life filling the role of the responsible one, often at the cost of my own dreams. When the day of the meeting arrived, I entered the family home feeling a mix of trepidation and determination. In the living room, Lena was already there, seated comfortably with an air of entitlement that only she could muster. She greeted me with a smile that was as insincere as it was dismissive. "Sam, isn't it great that Mom and Dad want to keep the house and the family? I was just telling them how perfect it would be for my kids," she said, her tone sweet but laced with an undertone that made my skin crawl. I forced a polite smile, but inside frustration simmered. I'd anticipated her angle, yet hearing her speak so casually of claiming the house struck a nerve. Here I was, the sibling who'd sacrificed weekends, evenings, and opportunities to be here for our parents. And Lena thought she could swoop in, lay claim, and carry on as if I'd never existed. "Yes, it's important to keep it in the family," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But I think we should consider what's fair, Lena." My words were met with a soft, dismissive laugh from her, and I felt a surge of anger. It was a laugh that said she had already made up her mind, that any effort I made would be futile. "Oh, of course, Sam, of course," she said, waving her hand as though brushing off my entire history with our parents. "But I mean, I have kids. It's just common sense that they'd benefit from a bigger place, don't you think?" Her words were meant to sound reasonable, but every syllable grated against me. It wasn't common sense. It was entitlement. She was ignoring years of my sacrifices and contributions, dismissing them in a single sentence, because I didn't have children of my own. It was an old hurt, reawakened, and this time I was ready to push back. I glanced at our parents, whose expressions were tense. They were caught in the middle, visibly uncomfortable, clearly struggling with the prospect of choosing between their children. I knew it wasn't an easy decision for them, and a part of me wanted to just let it go. But then I remembered the countless nights I'd spent here, the dreams I'd set aside, the unspoken burden I'd carried to be there for them. I cleared my throat, feeling the weight of my resolve strengthen. "I don't think it's that simple, Lena," I said, my voice firm. "I've been here helping Mom and Dad for years, supporting them through everything. I think that should mean something." For a moment, Lena looked genuinely taken aback. The usual amusement faded from her face, replaced by a flash of surprise. Perhaps she hadn't expected me to speak up. I could see her calculating, reevaluating, but I knew I wasn't about to back down. I could see the gears turning in her mind as she prepared a retort. But before she could speak, my father cleared his throat. "Both of you have your points," he said slowly, glancing between us. "This decision is harder than we thought, and we need time to think it over." His words brought a sense of relief, if only momentary, knowing that my contributions were acknowledged, even if only partially. Lena's face fell slightly, but she quickly masked it with a neutral expression. The family meeting ended shortly afterward, each of us retreating with thoughts swirling, the tension in the room still palpable. Over the next few weeks, Lena made repeated attempts to swing the decision her way. She began visiting more frequently, bringing her children along and making statements about how perfect the house would be for them. She spoke about legacy, space, and the benefits her children would enjoy. To her, it seemed inconceivable that I might have a legitimate claim, as if my sacrifices and dedication counted for less simply because I didn't have a family of my own. I felt the sting of her words with every comment, every thinly veiled implication that my child-free life somehow rendered me less worthy. The final meeting arrived with a sense of inevitability. We gathered once more in the familiar comfort of the living room, though today the air was thick with tension. Lena wasted no time in reiterating her case, speaking passionately about her children's needs. Her arguments were delivered with the confidence of someone who believed the decision had already been made in her favor. She cast me a pitying glance, as though I were foolish for even trying to contest her claim. But I was ready. I spoke with a quiet conviction, recounting the years I'd spent caring for our parents, maintaining the home, and sacrificing my own ambitions. I could feel my parents' eyes on me, listening intently, perhaps realizing the depth of my commitment for the first time. When I finished, the room fell silent, a heavy pause stretching between us. Finally, my mother took a deep breath and spoke, her voice soft but resolute. "Sam, we appreciate everything you've done. We've decided that you should keep the house." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I felt a mixture of relief and validation. I glanced at Lena, whose expression had turned cold, her face flushed with anger. She began to protest, accusing our parents of favoritism, but our father gently cut her off, explaining that they had to honor the person who had been there, who had given so much without expectation. Lena stormed out, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. I sat with my parents for a while, the bitter sweetness of the victory settling in. I had won, but it wasn't without loss. The house was mine, but the rift with my sister felt deep, raw, and permanent. In the weeks that followed, I adjusted to life with a newfound sense of ownership and responsibility. The house felt different, like a part of me I had finally claimed. Though Lena and I remained distant, she eventually reached out, her tone softened with time. She admitted that she hadn't fully understood my sacrifices, and, while it wasn't a full apology, it was a step toward healing. I accepted it, knowing that family bonds were complicated and that forgiveness, like the house, was something I would have to nurture carefully. As I stood in the doorway of the family home one evening, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. This place held more than memories. It was a testament to perseverance, sacrifice, and the unspoken strength that had carried me through. And for the first time, I felt like I truly belonged, not just in the house, but in my own life.